Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Ahl Bayt at-Tayyibin at-Tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. Merciful Allah, spare me long enough so that I may complete my mission. In remembrance of His undying love and loyalty for His and our Master Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, strengthen your love and loyalty with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The second, in remembrance of his sister al-Masa'ib Zainab, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And the third, in allegiance and honor of our current Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman, salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Year after year, working with the community, the things that I hear from people is that we are feeling more stressed and more depressed than ever, when really it should be the other way round. I mean, we are all becoming more educated, we are all receiving promotions at work or gaining those materialistic things that we look for. We all have a shelter over our heads and a car or a mode of transport to move around. And our families are getting bigger and bigger with more and more children. So why are we feeling so stressed and depressed to the point where we're even taking antidepressants? The answer is very simple. That unfortunately, the way the world is and the way that we've been brought up is that we have taken our priorities that Islam has set out and we've turned it upside down. So we put everything else first other than what we should be putting first. And subconsciously, that builds a pressure on us. And that pressure, although we don't realize it or we like to maybe ignore it, or we do something, for example, we say in Farsi tawjih, where we say, oh no, but I have to earn money because I have to look after my family and provide for them. But then the question comes, how much is enough? And what are we sacrificing in order to earn that extra money? Now what happens is that these pressures build up subconsciously, and then when we come home, we're so tired and mentally stressed that instead of spending time with our families, we want to sit down and unwind. So we take out the mobile phone and we start scrolling, Telegram, YouTube, whatever it is. And before you realize it, hours have passed that we've been spending time so-called unwinding. Then when the wife comes and says, how comes the bins have not been taken out, or why don't you come and look after the child, or he needs to be bathed, then we suddenly explode. Did she ask something unreasonable? No. So why did we react this way? We reacted this way because, as they say in English, it was the last straw that broke the camel's back. That we're so stressed knowing that we are not attending to our main duties, that this small duty that comes on top causes us to explode and react in a manner that we shouldn't even react towards anyone, let alone our own wife or children. So what I wanted to discuss today is, and I have a very short amount of time, I'm going to do my best to fit as much as I can in, so please bear with me, is the role of a husband and a father in the house. Now, Allah says in the Quran in Surah Nisa, ayah 34, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Ar-rijalu qawwamuna 'ala an-nisa. And oftentimes when we hear this, we're told that this means that men have an authority over women, or they are stronger than women, or they are more important than women. Yet this has no meaning whatsoever at all when it comes to the word qawwam. Qawwam actually shares the root word as qayyum. So when we recite in Ayatul Kursi, Allahu la ilaha illa huwal hayyul qayyum, qayyum is one of the names of Allah. So if we stop and we think for a moment, Allah has come and given a root of His own name, shares the same root, to say that men have a position of qawwam. Now, what does qawwam also share? It has many, many meanings, and I'll bring a few here just to hopefully remind myself and enlighten us, hopefully. Now, qawwam shares a root with qiyam. It means to stand. So that's why in Ayatul Kursi, when he says Hayyul Qayyum, the next line is La ta'khuzuhu sinatun wa la nawm. So it means it's the opposite of sleeping or slumber or resting or inactivity. So qayyum means that. So qawwam also takes it from there. It means qiyam, to stand. Now what's Allah trying to tell us by using this word for men? By labeling us as qawwam. He's telling us that you cannot take your role in the home as a husband or as a father as an inactive role. In fact, you have to be the one that is active. You have to be the one that is striking conversation with your wife, seeing how she is. You are the one who has to constantly give love and so on and attention and care. And actually the word qawwam means to sustain or to maintain, the same way that Allah sustains and maintains the whole of creation. The man is meant to sustain and maintain the household, in particular the women of the household. Notice it doesn't just say his wife, it says nisa. It means your daughters, your mother, your sisters, your aunties. So the man's duty here is not something small. Also from the word is qama, qad qamatis salah. What does this mean? This means that you commit to something, you stand for something. So back in the time when the Prophet first proclaimed Islam, it was very rare that people would go around the Kaaba to pray, because if they did go around the Kaaba to pray, people would come and beat them. The kuffar, the munafiqeen, they would throw stones at them, beat them, scare them away. So if someone stood to pray, it meant that he was committing to the oneness of Allah. He was committing to this path. The same way that a man has to commit to his role as a father or as a husband. It's not something that we can take as inactive. Also qiwam. Qiwam means a pillar. Now as you know, this house, you can change all the walls, you can move the furniture around, you can do whatever you want, but the pillars, the structural pillars, remain constant. Why? Because the weight of the house is on those pillars. The same way that the weight of your wife, her emotions, and I'm not saying that women are emotional before they start saying, he mentioned emotions first. No. Her emotions, she's an emotional being, and she has to be, because she's the mother of our children. And she is the one that we are meant to find peace in. If she doesn't show emotion to us, how can we feel loved? Or after a stress day, come home and be able to, for her to be able to calm us down. So that's her speciality, her emotions. But it means that we also have to be able to bear those emotions and not just dismiss them. Which unfortunately we hear a lot of the time, we men, we do that. We come home, we're stressed, we don't really want to talk much, we just want to eat and then go back to work. So one more word which I will use is qima, something that gives, not the rice and the khoresh and so on, the thing that gives a value. The man is meant to give value to the lady. How? Through telling her that she's beautiful. As Dr. Managhabi, he said that we are meant to tell her over and over again that we love her. Not just once. When you get married, you say you love her and then that's it for the rest of the 10, 15, 20 years. No wonder marriages begin to fizzle out. No wonder the love between parents begins to die out, because there's none of this inactivity from the male, and the woman's trying all these years and the man is not addressing it. So then in the end, she also ends up giving up. And that's a very, very sorry state. The day that she gives up is a sorry, sorry state. So it's up to us to be the ones to maintain that. Now, the issue is that we have not set the correct environment in our households for our children to grow up. So many of us, we go into marriage and we have children and we have not yet educated ourselves what that means to be a husband and a father. And note, I will always say husband and then father, not father and then husband. And I'll tell you why later. The home is an incubator for our children. What they see from us as parents is what they will take as their reality into the world. That's why you will see many studies of people, children who've grown up in abusive families where the husband is striking the wife or vice versa, and the children will take them as their role model because that's what they've seen all this time. Their brain has been hardwired. So even when they grow up and they look for their own partner, they will usually be stuck in similar abusive relationships. And if they do happen to come across some good luck and find a good partner, they will do something called self-sabotage. They will self-sabotage the relationship to come out of it and then go and put themselves into another bad position. Because that's what they've seen. That's what they're used to. It's called the concept of familiarity. When you are familiar to something, that's what you see comfort in. So it's our duties as parents to make sure that our children have the chance to grow in a household that is constant, that is stable, that is loving, so that they also learn their duties towards their future spouses. Now, one of the things that we hear a lot being a teacher in the community is that we need to discipline the children. The youth are not disciplined. And whenever you talk about discipline, suddenly you see a man taking off his belt, ready to, who's next? We have misunderstood the term discipline. It does not mean to strike or to beat or to smack or to kick or any of these things. Discipline comes from Latin word disciplina, which means knowledge, education. It means to instruct, to cause tuition for something. In other words, when we think of discipline, the first thing we have to think of is how can we get the message across in a way that they will understand and accept. If you raise your hand, believe me, the first thing that happens in their mind is a block wall comes up. And they don't listen to anything you're saying because they're just taking that beating. You can say anything you want afterwards, they still won't accept it. Why? Because you've broken that bond. With that hit comes a breakage in that bond. Now, alhamdulillah, we're not the kind of people to beat our children, but we know people that may strike their children. So we have to understand that this is something that we need to correct, that we need to help the society. Discipline needs to be tuition and education and instruction. Now, I remember a story of a man came home one day and he saw that the cupboard in his son's room had come off the hinges and was on the floor. And he looked at it in amazement. What has happened here? So he calls the older sister and he says, what happened here? And she said he was swinging on the door, backwards and forwards, and it came off the hinges. The father had so much anger and rage in him, which is normal. You've come home after a long day of work, and then you see this, another issue to deal with, and why is my son doing this? Is he stupid? And you start using all these words to describe him. Fill on, He said, before I said anything, I kept telling myself quietly in my mind, go to your room. Go to your room. Not the son, telling himself, go to your room. He went to his room. 3 days later, he had the ability to come and address the situation. Because that allowed him time not to overreact, not to do something in the heat of the moment that would then break that relationship with his son. He went to his room, he left the matter, he thought about it, how can I address it, what can I do, what can I say, and then he addressed it. So it's very important that when we see that we are also feeling that anger, that we remove ourselves from the situation. And probably one thing I will also mention is that the woman shouldn't come and say, calm down, because that sometimes makes men even worse, and vice versa. So when you see one is at the height of their heat in anger, try and remove them from the situation, let them think about how to deal with it, and then address the situation. Otherwise, what will happen is that we will also raise children that beat their children. And that's not the correct thing to do. Apart from them again, Hajar Ayman Arabi said that this wife and this child is not ours for us to do what we want with them. They are an amanati from Allah, a trust from Allah. So imagine what you are doing with the trust of Allah when you're disciplining them. Even harsh words. Some may say, oh, but we don't hit our children. We just tell them off very harshly. Even sometimes telling them off harshly and calling them names is as much emotional pain as striking them, because the center in the brain which deals with pain deals with emotional pain and physical pain. So sometimes a child cannot distinguish. That's why when you tell a child for the first time, don't do that, I'm not going to speak to you, or I'm not going to be your friend, suddenly you think they overreact. They start crying, they start smashing their hands and feet around, because it's as if you've slapped them or you've beaten them. After 2 or 3 times of saying it, it becomes normal for them. And that means that you've already broken that bond. So discipline is something that we have to take very seriously in the community, and we have to understand that we do it with education, with care, with love. That's when they will understand and they will grow from it. The next thing is regarding playing with our children. Time is running short, so I will end on this point. Playing with our children. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Allahumma salli. There are countless stories where he would play with the children, and one that comes to mind is where whenever he would walk to the mosque, there would be children on the street waiting for him to be going to the mosque so that they can stop him, and he would get on his hands and knees in the street and act like a sheep. They would mount his back and he would say ba, ba, and he would walk on his hands and knees. Did he care that people thought he was crazy? No. Did he care that people hurled abuse at him? No. What he understood is that these children who look for him when he's coming to have that 5 minutes of play before Salat, they are lacking a father in the household. Yes, they have fathers, but the fathers are absent. They are not intentional fathers who do things for the sake of love and care and bringing their child up. This is very important. What we have to realize is that it's not the presents that we give our children, gifts and toys and so on, but the presents we give them, our presents. And I have witnessed this myself. Maybe 10 years ago, people would tell me, they'd stop me at the door and say, how can you talk about this stuff? You're not married, you don't have a child. Now I have a child, so there's no excuse. I've seen with my own eyes. My son, for example, he's very young now, 18 months. He makes up words. Manna munni. Munni manna. And he says it. And the other day I just thought, let me just copy him. So I started saying manna munni. And his face lit up. And he started smiling. And then everything he said, I would copy him. Then he started to change it. And it became a game between us. And every now and then I'll just tell him manna munni. And he'll just start saying it back. Yet I don't see that kind of reaction even when I give him a new toy. What does that show us? That shows us that he wants that interaction. In fact, doctors and psychologists have now come and said that one of the games that parents should play with their children is imitation. Copycat, they call it. So what the child does, you do back. And that makes the child feel heard and loved. It builds their confidence. It shows them that, oh, I'm leading the game. Imagine what that does for their growth of the brain. So I'll leave it there. Inshallah, I've given a small summary of what it means to be a husband and a father. When I mentioned priorities at the beginning, it's very important that we have time for these things. No one should say, I don't have time, I don't have money for these kinds of things, or it's unacceptable. Because when you care for something so much, you will find time in your schedule, and you will find money in your pocket. So when we talk about priorities, there are 4 P's that I will quickly brush over and then end the speech. The first one is that we have to prioritize ourselves as a person. I am a person. If I don't work on myself and if I don't have my connection with my Lord, through my meditation, through my prayer, through my yoga, through my whatever it is, if I don't have my connection with my Lord, then I will become an unstable person. Then how can I expect my wife and my children to rely on me? So we first have to prioritize ourselves as a person. And this is something very, very, very logical. Even on a plane, when they're talking about the emergency, the emergency information, they tell you first put your own oxygen mask on, then help your children. Because if you don't manage to do your own one and you pass out, then both of you are dead. Yeah? So see to yourselves first. Be a little bit selfish in order to make sure that you build yourself strong enough for your family. The second P is to be a partner. Before being a parent, it's important to be a partner. It's important to love your wife in a way that your children learn what it means to respect and love a lady, and vice versa. And if you create those two pillars in the household of a husband and a wife, then no matter what weight comes on those pillars, they will bear it. So, partner. Be there for your wife. As Hajj Ayman Aqbi said, takrim. Give ihtiram to her. She is the mother of your children. The third thing is a parent. That comes third after a partner, because if you manage to get the partner side correct, the parenting side becomes extremely easy. And notice it's not the word, when we talk about bringing up children, it's not childrening. We don't call it childrening or kidding. We call it parenting. Because a lot of the time, the work that goes into bringing up children is changes that we have to make to ourselves in order to be able to educate them and bear them. So parenting. The fourth P is professional. In other words, whatever career you have, whatever work you're doing, that comes last. And have the trust and faith in Allah that if you set your priorities in this manner, Allah will give the barakat. Allah will give the barakat. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطاهرين.